Hello everyone, Namaste, and all the greetings in the world. I am Khatib for the Grand Illusion Project. Today's video is very important because the concept of the ego is very foundational for my future videos. So I want you to really grasp what the ego is and how it is formed. So without further ado, here is the story of the ego. Our whole story begins with the birth of a little boy. Let's call him John Doe. John didn't know anything at that time. He was living life by pure curiosity, just observation, no sense of self. He didn't know how to answer the question, who am I? And then his parents came into play. First they gave him the name John, John this, John that. And this is how the ego of John has been formed. First, John had a really basic ego. Mom is drinking milk and dad is playing games. And that is how the ego started to divide reality into categories. Up and down, interior, exterior, makes me feel good or bad. The human brain is very good at labeling things. Based on observations, it creates the knowledge graph, some sort of navigational map that the brain superimposes to reality in order to make sense of it. In this big graph, the ego selects some nodes, such as student in math and male and African, and declares that this subgraph is me, to comprehend the limits of his organisms and where the other things starts. This is how John created his sense of identity. That identity in John's brain is only interested by one thing: survival. Survival of the physical identity, like avoiding danger, as well as the intellectual identity, like defending his beliefs. Now, after John has been raised by his parents, went to school, found a job, made friends and acquaintances, many other layers have been added to his ego, like intelligence, information, religion and dogmatic assumptions, science and rationality. The ego is now well equipped for defense as well as for attack. And there are even more layers, like morality, law, what's good and what's bad, what his parents and society expect of him. Now, John's consciousness become very complex and structured. For example, we can divide it into three categories: the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is the basic needs of John, like eating, drinking, sleeping, etc. But the id is a little bit primitive and impulsive. That's when the ego comes into play, to control the needs of the id. But the ego is also a little bit utilitarian, concerned only by net profit or short-term rewards, like not stealing food to not go to prison. And that's when we welcome a newborn, the superego. It is mostly concerned about values like love and altruism. It notices that this happiness lasts longer. But this adds more tasks for the ego, already dealing with the id that wants to eat any food in sight. Now he have to deal with the superego that wants to throw all his money by the window and give it to the poor. Do you see now how his ego is important? Without it, we would lose our minds. The ego is good. It is very useful, but it also has some drawbacks. The truths in which you believe It's information masquerading as knowledge. And that knowledge itself is masquerading as truth. This is what I've decided to call the grand illusion. But let's not complicate things. Why does the ego have drawbacks? It's simple. When you're using your ego, you are not conscious of that. Like when you learn how to drive a bicycle, you don't ask yourself, how am I going to drive it? You just get on it and drive naturally. That's exactly how John is using his ego. The negative effects of the ego comes from the fixation of John on it. He uses his ego and only his ego and never stops to wonder and look beyond. Let's take the example of a diet. A person that is overweight, he follows a strict and rigorous diet until he reaches a healthy state. Nothing wrong in here. But now, what if that man, even after reaching a healthy state, just continues on with the same strict and rigorous diet? Now, that is not pretty. Overusing the ego works somehow like that. We shouldn't use it in every moment in our life. For example, while admiring a landscape, the ego will always try to label things and give them a meaning and importance to the self. Now, the ego, ignoring anything that doesn't have a direct use to us, is actually a hindrance, stopping us from enjoying the moment. John here did a very big mistake. He confused the knowledge graph, which is just a map, with the represented land itself, which is reality. John had forgotten his original feeling while he was a baby, experiencing life directly with pure curiosity and magic. Isn't that beautiful? Using only and unconsciously the ego can have very alarming consequences, such as depression and even suicide. Isn't it ironic? The ego ending the survival of the very thing he was created to protect. But that's very extremist. Let's not wander that way. Now John is frustrated. He has a perfect image in his mind of what a girlfriend should be, but his actual girlfriend does something that is not conforming with that. He tries to correct that. He tells her to stop doing that, but his girlfriend never stops, or stops only temporarily. So John is even more frustrated. The ego can even work in a very unconscious way. John now is blaming someone for throwing trash on the streets. He labels him as a bad person. John here is moralizing. This is the worst behavior the ego have come up with, because one day John forgot his own advice, and while in a hurry, he threw trash on the street. His subconscious, without him realizing, has already labeled itself as another bad person. At that precise moment, John didn't feel anything. But later, when he gets home, he feels frustrated and he asks himself, why am I feeling like this? Strange. While what has really happened is that he betrayed his own higher values. And that's not all. The ego can even become very intelligent and subtle. It starts going through the back door. Let's take another example. John tries very hard to lower himself and become humble, only to become proud about being humble. Even further, sometimes when you sit and observe your thoughts, you get a little voice in your head saying, look, this is the ego, making noise all the time. This ego doesn't want to shut up. Whilst in truth, this same voice that is judging that you think it is your higher self or something is nothing more than your ego, disguised blaming another fictitious ego. Remember, your ego is nothing more than yourself. It is not a separate thing from you. This is called the final trap of the ego. Now, John, by himself, discovered that his ego is hurting him and that his ego is not as useful as he thought it is. Sometimes it comes to such stupid and hasty conclusions. Now, John, with his higher self, tries to fight his ego to make it shut up. Oh, game over. Yeah. You should never fight with your ego. It's yourself. And initially, this ego had good intent. It wanted to protect you and make you feel good. It is not a bad thing that we should hate. Hating your ego makes yourself divided, torn in two, and as the saying, divide and conquer, is implying, we are in our weakest state when we are divided. There are many techniques to correct this problem, such as meditation, spirituality, understanding your psychology, etc. The key to all this is to dive deep in the depths of your mind, know yourself better, and like this, your higher self takes control in your life and it is now driving the ego to do good. The end. So, that's it. I hope you liked it. So, before finishing this video, I would like to pass a little message. What I want to say is that I'm actually very bad at drawing. So, I asked my sister to draw for me. Here she is.
Hello.
Thank you. Really thank you. That was beautiful.
Welcome, Reggie.
So, that's it. If you like this video, press that like button for me. Also, post your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget also to follow me on social networks. You will find the links on the description below. And in the meantime, namaste and have a good week.